In the thousand-system Glork's empire, Emperor Vorak had a truly twisted sense of humor. As a way to mock the earnest new human colony on the galaxy's edge, he sent them a diplomat he knew they could never respect, his own daughter, Princess Kalara. See, in the glittering courts of the Draconian Empire, everyone was judged by their slender frames and sharp symmetrical features. Princess Kalara wasn't. The court whispered that she was flawed, imperfect, and in their cruelest moments, obese. Her appointment was a diplomatic slap in the face, a public humiliation designed to last one miserable year. It was a joke told across the star lanes, but that joke never reached Marcus, a human mechanic whose hands were perpetually stained with grease and who preferred talking to starship engines over people. He was a quiet genius who saw beauty in complex systems and found solutions where everyone else saw broken parts. So when the princess's transport ship conveniently malfunctioned right after she arrived and she was shuffled off to his workshop, he didn't see the Emperor's joke. He saw a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, one that nobody had ever bothered to truly understand. And for a man who loved a good puzzle, she was the most beautiful one he had ever seen. Princess Kalara's arrival on the frontier colony was met with a symphony of thinly veiled snickers and painfully awkward greetings. The humans were expecting an imperial dignitary, a symbol of grace. What they got was a woman who, by her own people's standards, was a walking disappointment. The Draconians were a species of lithe, fierce warriors. Kalara, however, was built on an entirely different scale, broad-shouldered and full-figured, a living contradiction to her people's rigid ideals. Her ceremonial armor, clearly designed for a different body, fit poorly. The grav assists in her chair whirred with obvious strain, broadcasting her flaw with every single movement. Her father's cruelty was meticulous. Her shuttle's energy regulation system suffered a critical failure, a problem just a little too delicate for the local techs to handle. So she was guided through the dusty streets to a sprawling workshop on the edge of town, a place that smelled of ozone and hot metal. The sign just said Marcus's. Inside, she found him, a man who seemed to be made of equal parts oil stains and intense focus. He didn't bow. He didn't offer some flowery welcome. He just looked up from the engine core he was wrestling, his eyes skipping right past her and her attendants to land on the sputtering transport. "Energy regulations out of sync with the biometric stabilizers," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "They're fighting each other. Must be uncomfortable." Kalara was stunned. Her entire life, her body and the tech meant to support it were a source of deep shame. The Imperial doctors and engineers had always treated her like a defect. But this human, this grease-covered mechanic, was the first person to ever see it as a matter of comfort. "It is," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Marcus just nodded, grabbing a diagnostic kit. "Well," he said with a small, genuine smile, "let's see if we can make things right." That workshop became her sanctuary. Days bled into weeks. Marcus didn't just fix the transport. He became fascinated by its design and, by extension, by Kalara herself. He quickly saw that all of her people's technology was based on one fundamentally flawed idea, that there was only one correct way for a body to be. Her support systems weren't failing. They were actively fighting her, trying to cram her into a mold she was never meant to fit. So he scrapped the Imperial designs. He spent hours just talking with her, learning the nuances of her biology, the way she moved, the constant aches her old tech forced on her. He didn't see an obese princess. He saw resilience. He saw a biological design that prioritized strength and power over the fragile look her father's court obsessed over. "Your Emperor's engineers are idiots," he declared one afternoon, not as an insult, but as a simple professional diagnosis. "They're trying to build a cage when they should have been building a throne. And so, he built her a throne. He forged new support struts that didn't confine her but braced her incredible strength. He rewrote the code for her grav chair, not to just carry her, but to dance with her. He integrated the system so perfectly with her own biofeedback that it stopped feeling like a machine and started feeling like a part of her. For the first time in her life, Kalara felt light. She felt powerful. She felt free. In those long hours, a bond formed, deeper than any treaty. She told him about the lonely palace halls and a father who saw her as a stain on his legacy. He told her about a quiet life spent finding friendship in the hum of a perfectly tuned engine. They were two lonely souls who had been underestimated their entire lives. He didn't just fix her chair, he actually saw her. He admired her sharp mind, her quiet dignity, and the fierce strength she kept locked away. The mechanic who loved puzzles had finally solved the most important one, and in the process had fallen completely in love with the answer. Of course, their quiet life was a secret too beautiful to last. Word eventually trickled back to the Glorx Empire, not of a joke, but of a miracle. The flawed princess wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. She moved with a grace and confidence no one had ever seen, and she was in love with a human mechanic. This was not the humiliation Emperor Vorak wanted. But just as the news started to cause a stir, things got complicated. Emperor Vorak fell gravely ill, and in the power vacuum, a hardline faction called the Council of Bloodlines seized control. Then, the real crisis began. Kalara and Marcus had a child, a beautiful baby girl named Arya. She was a perfect blend of both her parents, with her mother's resilient physiology and her father's curious human eyes. To them, she was the symbol of their love. To the Council of Bloodlines, she was an abomination. A cold, menacing draconian warship tore through the sky above the colony. An envoy, the imposing General Thrace, marched right into Marcus's workshop. He didn't come with greetings. He came with a decree. By order of the Council of Bloodlines, keepers of the imperial purity, he boomed, the hybrid anomaly designated Arya is to be surrendered. It is a threat to the genetic integrity of the draconian line. Marcus immediately put himself between the general and his family. But it was Kalara who stepped forward. The shy, ashamed princess was long gone. In her place stood a queen and a mother, her eyes blazing with a fury that could melt steel. "My daughter is not an anomaly," she snarled, her voice ringing with an authority she'd forgotten she had. "She is the future, and you will not touch her." The interplanetary incident had officially begun, not as a war of lasers and ships, but as a war of ideals, centered in a greasy workshop at the edge of the galaxy. The standoff in the workshop was unbelievably tense. General Thrace talked of treaties, imperial law, and genetic purity. The small human colony, surprisingly, rallied behind their mechanic, refusing to let an empire just snatch a child from her parents. But it was Marcus's simple human ingenuity that truly turned the tide. While Kalara was busy tying the general in legal and procedural knots, Marcus had been working. He broadcast a simple message to the warship overhead. It wasn't a threat, it was a data packet. It contained his complete analysis of draconian support technology, laying bare all its flaws and inefficiencies. It included his designs for Kalara's new system, a system that was cheaper, more effective, and far more humane. It ended with a medical and engineering projection. Within 2 generations, the Draconians' rigid genetic ideals would lead to systemic failures and biological decay. His final note was simple: "Your way is a dead end. Our daughter is the proof." Faced with undeniable logic, a brewing diplomatic crisis, and a princess who was now a symbol of defiance, General Thrace had to reconsider. Starting an open war for the sake of pure prejudice was a losing fight. With a grudging, almost imperceptible nod of respect to the human mechanic, he and his forces withdrew. The Emperor's joke had backfired in the most spectacular way possible. He sent his daughter to be mocked, and instead she found her power. He tried to highlight humanity's supposed inferiority, but a simple human mechanic exposed the fatal flaws of his entire empire. Marcus and Kalara's family became a quiet legend, a testament to the idea that true worth isn't found in some impossible standard of perfection, but in acceptance, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is a mechanic who sees the beauty in what everyone else has thrown away. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more tales from across the galaxy. Share it with someone who loves a good story, and let us know in the comments what you think the future holds for Marcus, Kalara, and their daughter. Your support helps us bring these worlds to life. Thanks for watching.